Today, I want to talk about Avowed, Obsidian's most recent game, give my kind of final thoughts on it. I've sat on it for like a week since I beat it, and now I want to talk. I'll try to keep this short and sweet, but we know how I can be with that. Okay, so my final thoughts on Avowed are that it's just a good game. Like, I know that sounds generic and probably not very helpful for most people, but it's just a good game. I don't think it does anything like a 10 out of 10 level. Um, I I just think that for the first time in a while, we got a game that very purposefully, at an early enough point in development, the studio said, "Okay, we can't do everything 10 out of 10. We can't try to do everything the best. So let's pick like the 5 things that we think are going to be the most fun about this game and really hone in on those. Do our best everywhere else, but to not try to be the everything game." Where I feel like so many games that come out nowadays try so hard, at least in development, to be the everything game. I think Cyberpunk 2077 is the best example of this, of, a game that wanted to be everything, that said it would be everything in the lead up to its release, and then came out and wasn't. And to this day still isn't, even though it's improved a lot. But I think, the issues we saw with development with that and its release state was just they ran out of time and resources. And they couldn't just keep working on the game indefinitely. So they had to put it out in a state that was worse than it needed to be because they were trying to make it the everything game. Avowed, I would argue, is the complete opposite. And it's not like Avowed has had a simple development story. We know that at one point it was a co-op, it was a co-op game, and they, pivoted and went away from that and did a more traditional single player RPG. And that's a similar story to what we had with a game like Dragon Age the Veilguard. Another game I really enjoyed. It was my game of the year last year. But a game that definitely felt like it was trying to be the everything game more. And a game that never really shed its history of being a very different type of game. And I think that kind of carried through and ended up hurting it in the long run. Despite it being, in my opinion, a very good game that's had some other stuff around it, right? But back to Avowed. I went into Avowed not really expecting to like it. I'm not really into high fantasy games. I really don't like these action adventure type games that are first person typically. And I went into it honestly kind of negative. I went into it kind of expecting not to like it. And then I played it. And literally within the first 5 minutes, it was basically the first combat I felt. I was like, oh, okay. They've got something here. I did a ranger build in my first playthrough that had like sword and board and a bow. I tried to focus on the bow, but by the end of the game, found that the sword and board was just more effective. And as you got skills for parrying and things like that, it felt pretty good as well. And then I started diving in, and it was so fun as someone who's played a game like the Mass Effect trilogy 20 plus times now, as well as other, action adventure RPG type games repeatedly. And where, like in Mass Effect, I know every dialogue choice and every action and everything you need to do to get the exact result you want from the story in the game. With Avowed, that wasn't true. It was open to interpretation. I was discovering it as long as, everyone else. And that was cool. And the world that they built is really good for that. One thing I really like about the game is it really encourages exploring because there's easy to acquire like materials all over that you can use for crafting and things like that. There's treasure chests everywhere that can help increase either get you money or improve your loot or your equipment and things like that. And it just felt like it really was fulfilling to go explore and do those things. Some of the side missions I found to be extremely good, to be very compelling, and to the point of doing one of the side missions I did, helping out this couple who was like kind of on the run, ended up impacting my game multiple times down the line. This was completely a side mission that I could have skipped or ignored entirely, and I didn't, and that ended up paying off, and that was really cool. Um, the graphical side of things is kind of a mixed bag. The overall aesthetic of the game is really beautiful. The environmental side of things, especially, is very pretty just from a design point of view. There are parts where, especially if you get down in on it, and it's maybe not the prettiest game on earth. Um, and the character models are pretty good. I think they all looked okay. I'm not gonna say that, some of them looked a lot better than others. We'll say that. One of my biggest issues was just like lip sync animations are just bad, which is weird because they're using Unreal Engine 5, which has the metahuman system, and part of that system, things that they highlighted years ago, was being able to take dialogue, audio that you put into the engine, and it, at least in their demos, was able to lip sync very effectively. My guess is that that's either really heavy on the system and it just isn't realistic for a lot of games to use it, or there's other limitations. Obviously, I've only seen this demoed. I'm not really sure how good it actually is, but that's kind of a nitpick. Um, the overall story of the game I found to be pretty good. I like the reactivity of, like I talked about, the side mission that I did. It seems like you make a lot of choices through this game, and seeing that there's, as far as we know right now, a unknown number of endings to the game, including an ending that's a musical. Supposedly, I saw an article about that. You have to. It's pretty hard to get it. You have to make some very specific choices. I like the reactivity. I like that. All the side missions you do and the choices you make throughout the whole game seem to legitimately impact the end of the game. I think the end of the game is a little flat for me. I won't get into spoilers, but I will say it, like, the final act was a bit stretched for me. But the final part of that act for me kind of brought it back and left me with a higher opinion than I thought I was going to have. That's my very vague, non-spoilery thoughts on that. Um, the characters and such are okay. I found Kai to be the only companion that was like really compelling. It kind of feels like they spent a ton of time on Kai with their kind of companion quest and things like that. And then Giada, Marius, and Yatsley all being just kind of shadows of that, where um, and I kind of just didn't like those characters a ton. Giada was okay, but Kai really stands out. This may be because they're voiced by Brandon Keener, who voiced Garrus in the Mass Effect series, and for me, the Isaac AI in the Division 1 and 2. Maybe I'm just biased towards him because I like his craft, the way he does things. But he really was, in my opinion, the most fleshed out NPC or companion that you deal with, and that really improved his kind of standing with me in general. Like I said before, though, as you hear me talking about this and really blabbering on, there's definitely weaknesses in this game. You're not going to see me trying to convince anyone this is a 10 out of 10 game. But I will say this is like an 8 out of 10 game that I think most people should at least try. It being on Game Pass and on most other platforms, I assume even PlayStation eventually, makes it really accessible to people. And I think it's worth at least a try. My playthrough was about 30 hours. I would say in the first biome, I believe there's technically four, um, I 100% of the first biome. And then I like 50% of the second one. And then I basically golden pathed it through the rest of the game. If you 100% of this game, I imagine you're looking at 40, 50 plus hours if you dig into everything. And as I learned after I finished it, that probably would have impacted my. If I would have spent more time, I would have probably enjoyed the later acts more. And for me, it was just a thing where I just got so curious about how they were going to wrap this thing up, and the way that they do the antagonist in this game. I really like games that don't just do straight up black and white, good and bad. I really like games that, much like in real life, kind of show that everything's gray, different shades of gray, on a spectrum between good and bad. And I think this game does a really good job of not only showing that, but allowing you to explore that and to place yourself kind of anywhere on that spectrum you want to. Um, Without getting into spoilers, I feel like that's all I can say about that. Overall, I think the gameplay is extremely strong here. I think the puzzle solving and stuff is fairly simple, but still satisfying. I think the characters are okay. I think the story is good. I think the graphics are really nice. Um, I just, it's just a good feeling game. It's just a game that I really enjoyed. Like when I was in it, I was enjoying it, and when I wasn't playing it, I was thinking about playing it for the whole 30 hours of my playthrough. I think that's about as much praise as you can give anything. I've seen a lot of chatter. I really believe that the like really negative reviews I've seen are people who went into it with maybe the wrong expectations, which is their right. That's fine. Or just never really were willing to buy in, because even I went in like not expecting to like it, and then came out really enjoying it. Um, there's some of the controversy about woke DEI stuff, whatever. The stuff never comes up in this game. Literally, people are mad because you can pick like your pronouns at the beginning, and from what I remember, it like never comes up. It's just looking for reasons to be upset at this point, but that's a whole different video. At the end of the day, I highly recommend this game to everyone. I think this is a game that anyone could try and possibly enjoy. I know it's probably going to be in my top 5 at the end of this year, depending on what else comes out, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if it is. I really enjoyed this. And while I've seen people trying to compare it to Skyrim and other games that maybe people thought this was going to be, my best comparison is the Mass Effect trilogy. This is the closest I've felt to playing a Mass Effect game, other than maybe Guardians of the Galaxy that came out a few years ago from Eidos, since the Mass Effect trilogy. So if you like Mass Effect trilogy, if you like kind of the way those games are and the tone of them and things like that, and if you also like high fantasy games, this is probably the perfect game for you. No, you can't murder entire towns. You can't kill every animal you see. You can't, there's a bunch of that stuff you can't do. This is going back to my whole thing about the focus. They really focused on some things and didn't try to be the everything game. Those things are all an example. If you've seen chatter about that, those things don't matter, to me at least. And I don't think they'll matter to most people. Go try Avowed. I highly recommend it. That's kind of my final thought on it. If you like this video and you want more reviews and commentary on Xbox and video games in general and all of that stuff, subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button on this video so other people see it as well. And if you really want to support what I'm doing here, please consider becoming a YouTube member. You get videos just like this one a bit early. If you want to see all of my other content and other ways to support, check out the links in the video description. That is all I have for this one. So until next time.